Now, it's been a busy few days for the Russian President Vladimir Putin. From getting the red carpet treatment in North Korea, he's gotten a warm reception in Vietnam. Putin signed a series of deals earlier today from Hanoi. The visit will no doubt be used to demonstrate that he isn't the pariah the West deems him to be. We can now bring in France 24's Andrew Hilliar from our International Affairs Desk. Andrew, great to see you. Vladimir Putin has more to gain from this visit than Vietnam, doesn't he?
He does. We have seen at least a dozen deals signed from education to science, technology and energy. But the importance of this trip for Vladimir Putin, it's less about trade, even though Moscow clearly wants to boost trade. Vietnam is a comparatively small trading partner for Moscow. Trade between Vietnam and Russia totaled around $3.5 billion in 2022. In the same period between the US and Vietnam, it was $123 billion. So what this is about for Russia and for Vladimir Putin, it's about Putin's global pivot away from the West towards the East. And to illustrate that, I can just show you a map. And you can see it shows you the countries that Vladimir Putin has visited since 2022. So as you can see, of course, since he launched his full-scale invasion of Ukraine, he's pretty much been seen as a pariah in Western countries. So no Western countries on that list, of course. And it's a good indicator of what Vladimir Putin's priorities are now. He's done 3 visits to China since 2022. Of course, Moscow increasingly reliant on Beijing. And his visit to Vietnam needs to be seen as part of this as part of this trend. Vladimir Putin wants to show the world that there is an alternative to the Western-dominated international order. He's basically saying that even when you're ostracized by Western governments, when you're sanctioned, and even despite having an ICC arrest warrant, you can still go on state visits, as he's done in Vietnam and now as he did in North Korea as well.
I mean, North Korea is a pariah state for most of the world, but Vietnam is a different story. Let's talk about, obviously, the U.S. has criticized this visit to Hanoi. What is Vietnam hoping to get out of it?
Well, first, I think we need to put this visit into the context of Vietnamese foreign policy, and it can be encapsulated with the 4 no's. So that is a foreign policy that originated in a series of Ministry of Defense, Vietnamese Ministry of Defense white papers from 1998 to 2019. And here they are. No military alliances, no siding with one country against another, no hosting foreign military bases, and the latest one, no using force or threat of force in international relations. And this, I think, encapsulates the idea of so-called bamboo diplomacy. This is Vietnam's concept of diplomacy, whereby it sways with the geopolitical currents without ever getting swept away by them. So hosting Vladimir Putin is important for Vietnam because it's a reflection of the historical ties between the two nations. Vietnam and Russia, when it was the Soviet Union, were once on the same side of history, of course. This is also about Vietnam showing that it can host anyone, whether it's the Chinese leader, the Russian leader, or the American leader. We saw the pinnacle of that bamboo diplomacy last year when Vietnam hosted President Joe Biden and Xi Jinping within 3 months of one another. So that said, the visit has provoked an angry response from the US. I can just bring you that response now. A spokesperson for the US Embassy in Hanoi saying that no country should give Putin a platform to promote his war of aggression.
Interesting statement there. That brings us to Ukraine. Where does Vietnam stand on Russia's actions in Ukraine?
Yeah, so Vietnam has officially taken a neutral stance on the war in Ukraine. It has never condemned Moscow's invasion. It has also abstained on 4 UN resolutions condemning Moscow's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And that's despite the fact, Delano, that Vietnam takes the principle of territorial sovereignty very seriously. You have to remember, this is a country whose territorial sovereignty has been violated by no less than 4 countries in the last 80 years, by China, Japan, France, and the US. Vietnam and Ukraine also have a lot of shared history. This goes back to when Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. So what Vietnam has done is, short of showing outright support for Ukraine. It has supplied Ukraine with humanitarian aid via international organizations. But it does, I think, the issue of the war in Ukraine epitomize Vietnam's concept of bamboo diplomacy and the fine line it has to tread.